Hello, hello, and good morning. Happy sunny Wednesday. Yes, folks, it was a little gray the other day here in LA. I don't know what part of the country you're in, but we need that spring summer sun, right? Well, if this is your first time joining us, hello, welcome. My name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. We are on the wrong slide, so let's get to the right slide. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, did you feel that sunshine, enthusiasm in today's intro? I'm feeling it. We're
I
like
know.
summer's coming. Summer's coming.
And for many, I always respect the parents here. That means summer vacation, kids are on vacation. We have the parents say, "Oh my God, the kids got to go back to school now." So that's coming
Summer
around the
camp.
corner as
Summer camp.
well. But yes, it does feel like there's a change in the air that summer is upon us. We've got a good show today, so let's go ahead and get started here. So once again, it's May and I'm already planning June. So go figure, right? And the time just keeps going by. I've got my Sole Prop LLC S Corp, which one and why webinar coming up. Please do jump in that before just going through like a legal Zoom and signing up and not knowing what you're signed up for or why. And that's the biggest question. That's why I ended it with why. I think that's the question that does not get asked enough when people choose legal structures. And of course, I got my financial literacy series that I'm always trying to push you guys into. Believe me, when you get through session 3 and you make a financial, can't even say it today, a financial model for your company, and you realize you got this little genie in the bottle that you can say, can I afford to hire? Can I do this? And it pops out the answer for you to analyze. You will be just sold on the fact that you're not going to worry at night and use your gut, that there's tools out there that can help you to make these key business decisions. So do jump into that session. Okay, coming up for the rest of May, I haven't done my June lineup yet, moving some people around. So we're just going to talk about May. But next week, and I said this last week, I just am so excited. I finally got a lawyer on my show. I can't tell you the number of times that I have tried to get a lawyer on the show. But I guess, wait a minute, it's not May 21st at 10 o'clock. Let's see if this actually happens because I'm convinced lawyers don't want to come on my show for some reason. But Nadine's going to be here and she is going to talk a lot about trademarks, when you get them, why you get them, and all other kind of legal aspects. It's great to have a lawyer on that we can corner and ask a bunch of questions. I've been dying to ask the lawyer questions about copyright and AI, and I think that's what keeps them from coming on the show. I go, "Oh yeah, let's talk about that." And they're like, "Oh, I'm busy next Wednesday," and they shut off. So I didn't pose that question to her, but we can do it next week, right? And then the following week we got Johnny coming on to talk about Mantra Coffee. Met Johnny as I met many others during the SBA loans for the fire victims. He had some damage to his coffee shop, and he's a fabulous person with an awesome story. So I'm very excited to have him come on and tell his story. Now, I've got one more thing before we get started with today, and I am going to show you something, and Sadie's going to put it into the chat. But the first thing you're seeing, you're like, why am I seeing these addresses, etc.? Because I want to start out by saying only if you're in this address, in these addresses, I should say, does what I'm about to say apply to you. Okay. So you have to be in these addresses. If you're in the addresses, which is the fire victims, there is a grant that's coming up and available for the Chamber of Commerce. We're going into that on Tuesday. So join us on Tuesday or go to this website for more information. I did want to mention it. I know a lot of individuals on our talk show may not be within the fire area, but in case you are and not aware of it, I wanted to make sure that I definitely brought it up. Speaking of that, and this is kind of what I'm going to talk about in my corner of wisdom that I share with you guys before we get started today. Yesterday, Sadie and I, as always, did our Tuesday webinars for the fire victims. And as I have watched the progression of what's happening, of course, there was the disaster, then it was trying to get loans. I noticed that many of the people I'm speaking with on a daily basis are now at this positioning where they know how much they're going to get in reimbursements, be it insurance, be it loans, what have you. They have a number. They know about what they're going to need to rebuild, and they're having to make, decisions. And for many of them, there is a shortfall in what they need to rebuild and where they're at. And I've been having many conversations about this, and I talked about it a bit on the webinar yesterday, and it struck me that this was a conversation to be had in all times, independent of whether or not there's a disaster. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. So in that, I was explaining to the individuals that as awful as it is, they do have many a clean slate. Many lost everything, right? So they have a total clean slate. They can completely start over. So while they're looking at what to rebuild, instead of just automatically assuming that the route to go is to rebuild exactly what they had, even though they may, I said, why not wake up one morning and say, well, if I had a clean slate, because you do, what would I create? And what's been amazing, guys, is in having that conversation, the majority of them, if not all, said, well, you know what? I didn't like that. I wouldn't build it there. I wouldn't build it here. I would, once I invited them, let's say invited them to take a different perspective and say, okay, let me step back and look at this and see what is it maybe I want. They knew, even though they didn't feel like they knew, when they got out of their own way, they were able to just communicate exactly what they wanted. And that allowed them to go back and look at the resources and see what they want to create. So what I'm saying is we don't need, and let's hopefully we don't have a disaster in our life to give us a clean slate. I use the term clean slate a lot because I use it even in my language. I try to look at it like every single morning when you wake up, you get a clean slate. Oh, I always say to my cat, we're still breathing. We're here. We get a clean slate. I think clean slates are good concepts in business because sometimes, many times, people hang on to businesses that are not financially successful. They're spending, money, investing money just to keep it open for no good reason. I always laugh and kid around. I see people will leave a bad marriage in a second, but they'll stay onto the business and drive it to the ground and put themselves in the ground included. So having a concept where every day is a clean slate to look around and reanalyze from a clean perspective, what do you want? What's working? What's not? Is a wonderful mental perception for life, for business, for all. So that's my words of wisdom for today, which is going to lead into conversations we're going to have. So I'm very, very excited to introduce my guest, Kevin Thibodeaux. Now I'm going to say it wrong. I said it right all the time. Kevin Thibodeaux. Vertist Consultants helps leaders and organizations thrive through strategic transformation, executive coaching, and leadership development. With a focus on clarity, alignment, and action, we partner with clients to navigate change, unlock potential, and achieve sustainable growth. Kevin brings over 28 years of leadership, change management, and coaching experience. He began his career at Accenture, honing leadership skills over 9 years before finding Kimrick Performance Group, where he managed more than 40 million in construction projects. Kevin, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here today.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Lori.
Kevin and I had a conversation before the show. And I think I'm going to say, Kevin, there's the story beneath the story. And I didn't even want to talk about it too much because I wanted the story to be live. So I know from my own experience of toggling between a small company and then being in corporate at a small company, when you're in corporate for a while, it usually does some kind of damage to your psyche. It does some kind of damage. You learn a lot and it's a great thing, but it does some kind of damage as well. And so I want to kind of go back. Let's go back in time. Let's go back into your early years. I've been a consultant my whole life as well, but I can't say that I grew up in a consulting family or said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a consultant, right? You don't think that way, right? So how did you end up even at Accenture? Let's go back into the early, graduating from high school, college. What did you go to school for? What did you think you were going to be back then?
Yeah, great opening question, Lori, and it's an honor to be here, and I'm excited to share. So, college, I studied engineering. I'm a civil engineer by degree, and
Okay.
having had multiple internships with various companies, I thought I was going to be doing civil engineering work with the energy company called Exxon out of Houston. That was my summer internship for 2 summers, and they were making me an unbelievable offer to work with them. And that's what I was going to do. I was going to be building gas stations and retrofitting gas stations in the Northeast and Maryland area. That's what I was going to be doing. However, Accenture came along on campus and I was encouraged to try. And they said, hey, instead of working just for Exxon, what if you worked for Exxon and Chevron and Shell and a host of other companies across different industries around the world? And as a young, graduating engineering student, that was very appealing. So I
Yeah.
decided to give them a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. I have always had the imagination and intellect that can create and get bored easily, right? And so every time I went to work for a company, I would get so far where I was actually going up the, ladder, and then I was like, okay, I want to do something else now. I want to do something else now, right? So having my own consulting firm that allowed me to appear that I'm completely following the straight road. I'm staying with the company my whole time. Well, playing in all these different areas was always appealing to me because it fed that side of interest and curiosity. And I think it also gives you such a great perspective. You see things from so many different angles that you bring that to the client relationship as you go on down the road. So, what would you say was the things that you have as the memories from Accenture? What was the good, what was the bad, what was the ugly? What was your takeaways from that experience? Because you were there for some time.
Yeah, I was there almost 9 years, and the good, coming from an engineering background, very technical, I learned a lot about business and a lot about different industries, of course, working across oil and gas, but also I did a lot of work in chemicals. I did work doing the dot-com bust aspect. I did a lot of work in trading, financial trading, as well as the physical aspects of trading commodities. So a very interest of our exposure to different clients and industries. So that was the plus. The
Yeah.
downside was a lot of pressure, some burnout, focused a lot on work, which definitely sacrificed I guess my personal development when it came to maybe relationships and doing things more from an emotional intelligence. I was very driven and business focused, high achiever.
Yeah.
I tend to hire a lot of folks in that domain, kind of A type. But those are some of the pluses and minuses.
Yeah, it definitely, I had a lot of friends that also worked for them, as well as not just pointing out them, but the firms of that size. And it is a work, 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 work. And if you're doing business out of town, my friends were always on planes and, really working to the point where they got burned out a lot on that. So then the next place you went was managing construction projects. Now, I have had enough experience being a CFO and a CEO for companies that were anywhere to do with construction, whether they were design, build, or architect or construction. And I remember saying that this was going to put me into the ground because nothing is on time. No, it's like herding cats. Let me say that's what it is like herding cats. I think it takes a level of skill, patience, and almost acceptance of insanity. That's my belief on managing construction projects. But tell us about your experience managing construction projects.
Yeah, well, that's interesting perspective, and I can share that at times because it is a challenge. The other perspective is that yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in construction, especially working with the the federal government, our state governments, local governments, as well as private.
Yeah.
And I had a unique opportunity. Given a civil engineering background, was encouraged to look at government contracting as an opportunity because there were programs through the SBA, the 8A, Hub Zone, Veteran,
Yep. Yep.
Women-owned programs. So unbeknowing at the time, Laurie, so that was part, naive in thinking, not knowing what I was getting into, looked into becoming an 8A contractor in the consulting space initially. And then people said the money is in construction. And given my engineering background, it said, okay, I can figure out construction.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it. And then it started out in the more in the I would say, retrofitting office spaces and things of that nature. But then heavy civil had a lot of opportunities that I, started attending some of the agencies and departments. They have open houses or share their forecasts. And I went to one and, sparked my curiosity as to what was on their forecast. And I said, boy, I think I can figure that out. And that's when I decided to be, start a general contracting firm and start doing heavy civil construction.
Wow. Okay. So what's really interesting is now we are going to take, I know we're going to take some twists and turns because now you have, and you have for some time, have your own consulting firm. So,
Mhm.
the thing that our audience loves to hear, especially when someone has had a long-term, heavy involved, let's just call it corporate life, because
Right.
they know when you go from a corporate life to being an entrepreneur, let's just say that's the scariest damn thing that people do. It's easier to, I think I started an entrepreneur, I started my company at 25, right? So I
Right.
didn't have any security at all at that age. And I had everything, freedom, that's the way you look at it, right? But when you've been in corporate for a period of time and you're jumping into entrepreneurship, that's where the challenge comes. And, Kevin, we were talking, I'm going to add this layer to our conversation as well. We were talking before the show about older entrepreneurs. And I noticed within even the SBDC client that our population is aging, which I love because you have people that say, I just retired at 65 and I'm starting a company, So there is no age to an entrepreneur. You can be 13, you can be still breathing. Okay. Let's just say still breathing, right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, when you're in the years that you still have to earn income, you're not retired with some, retirement money. That is the scariest because you've been, can we say like bottle fed a little bit in the corporate world and then you got to jump out. So I'll give that as an expression. But share with us wherever you want to go with that. Take the platform, give us a feel into how it came about with your own company, what made you make that leap, what it was like making that leap. Anything you want to address that I asked, Kevin, go for it.
Great. No, that's a good segue into that transition. And change is tough. I mean, it can be scary, it can be fearful, can also be exciting though. And that's and I think I had both mindsets, Laurie, and coming from corporate. One thought was, boy, I'm here making the partners' dreams come true and making them a lot of money. And I could see as you rise up as middle management, you get to see what's happening as far as the figures and the numbers and how this works, right? At the same time, thinking about doing my own thing, there's fear and uncertainty because you get used to that bi-weekly, that bi-monthly paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, how is that going to work? Okay. And so you have your own doubts and your own, like I said, fears. And there's a lot of pressure as well as uncertainty if you do leave. What is that going to be like? So I think for me, I saved. I saved some funds to give me that cushion because I knew my own mind was gonna try to derail. So having that savings to kind of launch but also live, that was the key thing.
I don't want to, I mean, interrupt, but Kevin, can I just say to the audience how important that is? Because I see people every day that launch with no money to back them personally for their personal bills, not recognizing, well, this is where your money's coming. And it does not put them in a mental good state. It doesn't put them in a financial good state. And I can't lecture enough on that. So thank you for mentioning that. Please continue.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I just knew myself, Laurie. I knew I was going to I really beat myself up if finances were, were not going to be taken care of. So, like, I want to iterate. I say not only for me to live, but also to launch. Now, keep in mind, I'm a single man at the time, making, a decent amount of money. So I did not spend, and a lot of my travels were handled by the firm. So I got a chance to save a lot, and I worked a lot. So there was no time to spend or
Yeah.
enjoy the vacation time, right? Literally all my frequent flyer miles, I donated or really bought my mom and dad trips around the world because they never traveled as a sacrifice from my siblings and I. So I just gave it to them and then focused on work. And then I knew I wanted to do something more. Now the piece, I don't know if I mentioned, I did go back to business school. I went to business school. So
Okay.
engineering was, the technical. Accenture gave me a lot of business exposure, but fundamentally, I went back and got the formal training, if you will. And some people could say business school is great or not. And I know you have a MBA as well, but that gave me a lot more confidence.
Yeah.
Honestly, gave me a lot of confidence in knowing that I could run the different aspects of a business, as well as from my consultative background, the combination. I felt very confident knowing that I could handle startup, financing, operations, HR, so forth and so on. So that was a big feather to give me the nudge to move forward. Plus, I sought out mentors that kept me on the course, essentially coaches at the time that inspired me and kept me focused and challenged me as well. Because at times, definitely, I'd come in with a lot of doubt. Am I making a good decision? Should I be doing this? What should I be considering? Those types of questions were definitely always there.
Now, when you sought out to be a consultant, Kevin, what is it, if I can ask, what is it you wanted to do? Because as a consultant, like my passion, it's changed over the years because I've consulted on different topics. At one point, actually, my website all commented on change management. I focused a lot on change management, especially with an NLP degree as well. I focused on change management a lot. But in the last like 20 years, my passion has really settled into I want everybody to understand their financials. Yeah, that's what I want, right? I feel like that will help them. So I think there is something, and oh, I want to add the reason I wanted everybody to understand their financials because when I started my company at 25 and was a sales and marketing person, I didn't understand mine, right? So it
Right.
usually goes into something we personally experience that we want to now bring to others. I almost left that part out. What is it that you were hoping and wanting to help customers, clients with, whatever you want to call it, and where did that desire come from?
Yeah. It was an evolution. So early in my career, let's go back to Accenture. I was more on the operations, more on the process, technology aspects of helping clients change, putting in the systems and the processes, right? And I'll be honest, I didn't have an appreciation for change management. Didn't know how important that could be because if you don't convince, the individuals, the hearts and minds of individuals as well as the collective organization of what's happening and why it's important and what's in it for them, boy, a lot of those great ideas for technology and processes don't land very well or
It's
are
so
not
true.
highly successful.
So true.
Yes.
Yes.
So I saw that through experience in that didn't have an appreciation, but noticed the work I was delivering, boy, it wasn't as effective and as efficient as I'd hoped. And as I'm rising through and getting experience, I'm starting to see, okay, there's a need here to bridge the gap. So
Mhm.
I felt like, change management folks that I interacted with, boy, they knew the change, but where's that medium of understanding the tech and having the business sense and the ability to kind of tell that story, in a positive fashion to say, here's what we're doing, and here's why we're doing it, and here's why it's important to you and why you should want to get on board. And if not, if you are a resistor or you don't like change or you're very much wanting to keep whatever is in place, let's figure out why and understand what it would take to get you on board. And having that ability to speak both the tech and the business and understand change, I saw an opportunity, and that's where I decided to play in as I left Accenture.
This is an interesting topic, and I'm going to break it down a little bit too, for those in the audience that may not be catching on to the nuances of it. And I want to start out by saying, for years, what I did is I went and did what we call in finance turnarounds. You go into companies that are
Mhm.
in trouble and you turn them around, right? Well, and I
Right.
always would say it would take me just a short period of time to dig through the financials and the cost and the operations and could we get loans and what is the current debt structure to get a plan mathematically on a piece of paper. Then it would take me so much time to execute the plan because of the humans. Those damn humans, right? At the time I was
Exactly.
like, those damn humans, right? But actually, I don't believe that anymore. But I'm just joking about it, right? Not that I totally believe,
Mhm.
but it's like the humans have such a power to create and manifest because the companies I went in, they could not get money. That's why they called me in. And so
Right.
it was the human creativity and the power of the team. And that's what I loved executing the plan. But if you couldn't get that human capacity to adapt to the change, to understand the change, to go forth with the
Mhm.
change, you were going to fail. That's one of the things that I found out that my weird degree in NLP certification that I didn't know why I was doing had such a crucial part. So
Right.
adapting and changing is so important. Now, where I want to go with this, Kevin, is yeah, we're talking about in a whole big company that's got culture
Mhm.
and everything, but okay, you get down to the individual solopreneur. They start a company. They
Right.
know they got to adapt new beliefs, perceptions, and mindsets, but they refuse to even change within themselves to the downfall of the company. So I don't care if we're talking about change management in a corporation, a society, a government, or a solopreneur. It comes down to some crucial components of why we're not and these are going to be questions to you, Kevin. Why can't we see it? And when we don't see it, why won't we do anything about it? How's that for the simplest questions? What is it about us?
Well, we all have blind spots, Laurie. I mean, we have what you call saboteurs, those little negative voices that tell us, things that may not be true or serving us well. And we have to challenge those things. And those mindsets, boy, we've been thinking this way and performing this way because think about it. As you think will affect how you feel, and as you feel will affect, what you do. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have a short time frame between stimuli and response. So I think part of it is, challenging that thinking and figuring out how do we build new neural pathways on how we handle things, and that takes practice. So having a coach is typically a good starting point to say, okay, let's talk about what's happening, what are the challenges, and understanding, what negative voices or saboteurs are taking or hijacking us at times. And that's why it's hard to see and it's hard to do anything about it because we're conditioned and we have to
Yeah.
break that condition.
We sure do. Now, do you think entrepreneurs are different animals in their thought processes and ways of going about things from maybe corporate, employees? Is there something about an entrepreneur that you notice that makes them a different animal? And do I think, well, let me ask that. I'll come back to the second question. I want to focus on that. Are us entrepreneurs different animals? Let's start with that one.
Interesting question. Yes, I mean, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, meaning, hey, I'm willing to take risk and try different things and see where the chips fall. And typically it's, I can jump and then figure out, boy, if I can land and make this work. So, some people are, more content with being secure in a corporate job and they love it and that makes sense. And there's that, that's fine as well. And some people are more, hey, entrepreneurial mindset, want to see what can happen with their ideas and the possibilities of bringing something to market, be a new product or service. So I think that's really the distinction. It's mindset.
Yeah, and in that, a lot of times people think that entrepreneurs are these great, brave, courageous people that aren't afraid and
Mhm.
have no fear. And that's
Mhm.
absolutely not true. I remember, not to go off on this topic, but for decades, I was a rock climber and I did aggressive climbs and I was a lead climber in trad, which is one of the most dangerous things you can do. And people said to me, from the outside perspective, they said, well, you have no fear. People said that to me all the time. You have no fear. And I said, no, I just know how to control it. That's the difference. I know how to control it and funnel it. I think entrepreneurs sometimes are some of the most fearful people because they are driven by the fear to overcome and excel. And that creates a whole lot of voices as well. Your thoughts on that, Kevin?
No, that's exactly true. I mean, I'm one of those people. I was driven by the fear of what if I got laid off by the company working for them? What if I could control my own shots and see what's possible? So that fear made me want to go out and do. And I always thought if I'm going to work as hard for the corporation, let me work as hard for myself. So you're absolutely right. Sometimes fear can fuel us to do great things. But at the same time, it can sabotage us. So how we manage it is the key. And you said it best.
Now, what are you seeing? Like, I'm sure there's a little bit of a common theme. So let's talk about the clients that you've helped. You don't have to mention names. I'm not asking for that. But give us a theme of like what they've come to you with and what you were able to notice within them and help them to adjust and achieve. Wherever you want to go with it, I want to keep it vague, but I'm sure there's commonalities you're seeing and you've got some interesting stories that you can share with us that we can even take a chance to look in our own being.
Yeah, I think great question. A lot of times we beat ourselves up, Laurie, for the shortcomings, the mistakes. We don't let it go fast enough to move forward. It holds us back, and we dwell on it or ruminate, and that is a lot of energy wasted on things that we can learn from or discern from and move forward, right? So that happens a lot. And then I see a lot of clients, boy, the fear of the future, the
Oh, yeah.
uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know certain things and it's hard. I try to, quiet clients' minds and say, hey, we can't worry about a bridge until we get to it. But boy, they're thinking about every scenario, which may or may not even come to fruition.
Yes.
But that is taking up a lot of cycle time and energy as well. So what I try to help clients do is build what I call their mental fitness, how they handle everyday life challenges with a positive mindset rather than a negative. And it involves quieting those negative voices, but amplifying their positive, their sage brain, what I call the wise side of their brain, to make good decisions and to discern what is needed now. What do they need to focus on and how do they activate and plan and navigate? So that's kind of what I do. But that's really the big challenge is dwelling too much on the past, focusing too much on the future and not being present at the time to handle what's in front of them.
I want to talk more about the sage brain. I like that. How do we
Okay.
get how do we get in our sage brain and how do we know when we're not in our sage brain?
Yeah, that's a very good question. How do we get in our sage brain? Well, we have to, develop what I call mental muscles. And the first muscle is kind of catching that negative mindset. And really, it's when a negative thought for more than a second, you're
Yep.
probably in your saboteur brain or
Yep.
saboteur, sabotage. It's like if I put your hand on a hot stove, Lori, how long before you take it off?
Right away. Yeah. Yeah.
Immediately, because guess what? That pain is an alert. It says, Lori, something is needed. You need to take your hand off the stove, maybe treat it. That might be what's next, right? So imagine that pain as negative emotions, disappointment, failure, and happiness. How long should you stay in it before you figure out, I need to do something?
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe a second, right? But to dwell in it maybe won't help you figure out what's needed or even what's causing it, right? So try to help clients recognize when they're in their negative, how to quiet that. And there's certain things you can do. A little bit of centering and mindfulness and meditation can kind of slow things down and get us out of that negative mindset. And then activate the sage by, figuring out, boy, what's needed. And there's some powers that I teach clients to employ. And it's really about, starting with empathy, maybe some innovation and exploration, of course, activation and navigation. And each of those is techniques that I help clients to develop. So as they handle these challenges, they kind of figure out which one of these or all of those are needed for what can help in that situation.
So true. And I feel as though so many people are not aware, they don't have an awareness by, I would say, what's driving them, what the thought in the head is and the action. I was fortunate enough to start studying this type of stuff very young. So by 20, I was exposed to this concept that your thoughts create your reality, which I completely understood to be true. And I also knew that my thoughts created my emotional state. And then at that time period, my understanding was pretty minor. I thought, okay, my thoughts create my emotions create my existence. It seems to me the most important thing is to manage my emotional states. So I'm going to have to know more what my thoughts are. And I was given several tasks with things I went through to actually pay conscious attention to my thoughts. And I remember at first it was hard. I mean, this is decades upon decades now. And now the minute, like if I go, you know what, I'm feeling kind of sad. What's going on in here, and I can go back and I can catch it. But I think it's so hard for people that do not have an awareness of their thoughts to even grab that awareness. Any advice, especially to our business owners that are suddenly in a fearful state and they're not in their sage brain making good decisions? How can someone train themselves to have a better awareness of what they're telling themselves? That's a hard one.
Oh, no, that's an easy one. First of all, well said. I mean, you said it better than I could actually say it, but you're exactly right. How we think definitely is, going to impact how we feel, and how we feel is going to impact how we respond, undoubtedly. So it starts with thinking, and if we had more self-command on our thoughts, boy, wouldn't that be great? So how can we do that? Well, that's where I come in. I mean, it takes training. It's like physical fitness, right? If you wanted to be, more physically fit, what would you do? Well, you would train, and you might even hire a trainer, in the case like a coach, who kind of helps you figure out, okay, if I want to be more mentally fit, and mental fitness is how Lori handles challenges from a positive mindset, because that thought controls how you feel, definitely how you respond. So we'd have to build up your fitness, your mental fitness. And I have a way in a program that I do that with clients and apply that, as well as help them, build a practice, do it over and over, because it takes practice. So imagine going from a place of not being fit and not having the capacity, then you're going to have to graduate and slowly understand, because awareness, as you mentioned, Lori, is 20%.
It is.
You know it. Insight is 20%. 80% is going to be the doing and the practicing and building up the new mental muscles that you need, just like in physical fitness. I can take you to the gym one time, but are you going to be fit? No. Have you built up enough muscle memory to know what to do and everything? No, it's going to take some training and some time. And over time, guess what? You can start to react, because sometimes you only get a split second between stimuli and response. So keeping you in a positive mindset on how you think will impact how you feel, and then how you respond.
And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier that you brought up that I was so thankful, and that's having enough financial backing. Because I think, I still talk about Maslow's law, the hierarchy of needs. And if you are focused on the lower Maslow law, there's no way you can sit there and go, I'm going to be positive about my business, get in my sage mind, I'm going to think through. I can't afford the rent. I'm scared, Shelley. You can't. So if
Right.
you don't carry, I've always said, I would hope, but it's not going to probably happen, guys, but I would hope in my lifestyle I can get so Zen Buddhist that I could have tornado around me and I'm like, oh, fine, I'm at peace.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen, guys. I think I need more lives to make that happen, right? So,
Right.
in other words, another way of saying it, Kevin, I have always had an understanding that our environment, whatever we want to call that is going to play a certain bit, because we, at least me, I am not conscious enough to say, I'm just a spirit, the environment doesn't matter. I'm like, there's a tornado, I'm running. I am having financial problems. I'm scared. I'm not making good decisions in my business. I'm discounting my price and I'm making no money because I discounted my price to sell more. You get where I'm going with that, right? So I
Yeah.
think there is a, like Sarah put in there so well, a survival mindset is a poor mindset. That's her comment. It's this, in fact, let's just go with what Sarah's saying, that survival mindset. I feel like I've struggled with that survival mindset a lot throughout my life, and I think entrepreneurs do. And I think we get a visceral reaction into the survival mindset when we start a company. Can you comment on that mindset?
Yeah, it's like going back to the reptilian brain, right? Fight or
Yes.
flight. Yeah,
Yep.
and a
Yep.
survival mindset, right? And therefore, it's like, those negative voices make us feel like, okay, are we good enough? I see a lot of imposter syndrome. Are we, ready? Are we? It challenges, it questions, it beats us up all the time. So imagine you got to be effective in whatever it is you want to do from a business perspective, right? Whatever product or service you're bringing to bear. And then your mind is doing all these tricks and causing all these challenges in your mind. And some of it is not even reality, but some of it is real. And we have to discern, no
Yeah.
judgment, to figure out, boy, what do we want to do about it? And the first step typically is learn how to quiet your mind, because your mind can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. So we got to get out of the survival mode into what we call thrive mode. And you mentioned it earlier, like the sage brain, the wise brain that we all have. And a lot of this is nothing new. I mean, I talk to friends who are in, the Buddhist or even Christians and whatnot, or even, a lot of self-actualization work. It all ties together, even from cognitive psychology, positive psychology, neuroscience. But it's a simple principle, as you mentioned. How we think affects how we feel, affects, how we respond. So you got to be mindful of what you're thinking. And so quiet in that survival, I got to just survive and make it thrive. And that takes time, takes practice, right? But that's really it, because we will beat ourselves up.
Yeah, we will. Kevin, you said something else that struck in my mind, another thought. It's going to sound like I'm going a little bit in a tangent, but I'm not. It's the imposter mindset. Okay, so I never really had a a lot of thoughts about the imposter mindset, because I haven't heard that term until I'm old enough that I don't feel like I'm being an imposter. I know it younger I did, right? So I didn't have a personal relationship with the imposter mindset when I first heard people using that term. But what's been really fascinating to me, going back to the fact that I also consult on legal structures, you saw my webinar coming up, right? And I'm a big speaker about, just because everybody on YouTube's telling you to get an LLC and LegalZoom makes it, that doesn't mean what you need to be doing, because you could operate as a sole prop to you have a better idea. So I talk about that all the time. There's certain things, right? What I
Right.
have been really confused and concerned with, and it's so funny you bring up imposter mind. You would not believe how many clients I sit with with the SBDC on a daily basis. They haven't even started anything yet. They don't need to be a legal structure. And they say to me, I wanted to start and be now a real company, so I formed a corporation. And I said, wait a minute, a real company is just somebody that you can pay the friggin' bills. A sole prop's a real company. Like 82% of the companies in the United States is well, I think that the imposter mindset in our young entrepreneurs is causing them to even make bad legal decisions, because they feel like they're not real, like not good enough. And then everybody says, you got to be an LLC. And it's like the Gucci bag of LA. So
Right.
what is this imposter mindset? It seems to be controlling people. And did what I just say make any sense at all?
Made a lot of sense. And I'm going to broaden it out a little bit, but I'm going to start with the imposter, in that, yes, when you're in that negative mindset, you're not going to make good decisions. It is hard to discern and figure out what's best and what's needed. And what's needed may be to seek legal advice to see what entity, what structure should I, set up based upon risk and taxation and so forth, right?
Right.
But because we're in that mindset, that negative voice is saying, I got to do something. Go do it now. Go do it now. And so you make decisions that may not serve you well at that point in time. But the imposter, boy, it can show up in so many fashions. I mean, I've, from even your family, your parents may have said, hey, you got to be twice as good because you're a woman, Lori. And guess what? That's creating this idea or this mindset that I got to be twice as good, which may not be true, right? You've got to be great no matter what to survive, but twice as good, that's a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. And we get told that a lot in so many facets, given who we are and our intersectionalities and so forth. But a lot of things can cause us to have that self-doubt and to feel we're not worthy, or we're not good enough, or I'm not ready. And that's all a part of that imposter aspect. But those are the negative voices that if we don't learn to quiet, they don't go away. You got to kind of quiet them so they don't hijack you. Because when they hijack you, there comes the responses or the decisions that may not be best, and hence creating entities that are going to cause you more,
Yeah.
challenges from to manage, and you don't need to at this point because that's money, right? For tax filings and creation and everything. So
Exactly. That's exactly true. Now, you used another word and you used it before we talked, before we started the show. You used it during the show, and I wrote it down because I wanted to ask you what this word means. Positive intelligence.
yes, positive intelligence. I'll be happy to share. It's based on the idea that I've said it a few times on having mental fitness, how we handle challenges from a positive mindset versus a negative. It's from the work of a guy by the name of Shirzad Shameen. He started a coach training organization, then he founded Positive Intelligence. And I'm a positive intelligence coach. It goes by PQ. And you guys may have heard of EQ, emotional intelligence, and maybe, we all know IQ, our cognitive intelligence, which is typically set by the time we're 18. But PQ is kind of the new thing that's taking shape in corporate as well as for entrepreneurs. I've been doing a lot of PQ coaching. I'm a PQ coach. And what
Okay,
that
I
means,
don't know PQ. Tell us more, please.
I'll tell you, yeah, PQ is kind of the new thing. And it's really, it's a great a way of kind of training our mind, that mental fitness that I call, or mental training, because PQ, the founder, Shirzad Shameen, developed, he recognized that, boy, to kind of your question about how do we, quiet the negative and amplify the positive, well, he recognized we need practice. So he actually created a unbelievable app, Laurie, the PQ app that I utilize in my coaching practice. And I always thought, and I always wanted to create an app to support my coaching, because I always said, boy, whoever creates an app could be rich beyond their years, that supports the coaching, journey. Well, PQ did it. He beat me to it by some years, of course. And when I found out about it from other coaches, it really impacted me personally. So I actually live by it, and it's actually profound changes on how I've evolved from a coaching standpoint in my business, but also from my clients. I've taken quite a few clients through the PQ journey, but literally it's coaching supported by an app to help people quiet their minds, activate the wise part, and then go about making, decisions as it pertains to the challenges or goals they want to achieve from the wise part. And that just takes practice. But let me summarize. A lot of this, guess what? It's not rocket science. We know some of this, but the way it's structured, Laura, it's so great and it's elegant in its simplicity, and it makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually trying to bring it to younger leaders at this point in time. I think catching leaders earlier in the life cycle, I think would be great.
Tell us more, like give us an example. Like, does the app give you meditation to calm the mind? Does it tell you to do things? I mean, I got an understanding of it, but what is it actually doing, or what is PQ actually doing? Can you give us a few examples so we can delve into it and understand it a little bit more?
Sure, happy to share. So it's a 7-week program, and it's guided by your PQ coach. So I guide my clients through it. And over those 7 weeks, every week you're building what we call mental fitness, mental muscles. And there's 3 main muscles clients need to build. The first muscle is kind of catching those negative voices and knowing what to do when those things come about, right? Because they show up. Remember my point, hand on the hot stove. When those negative emotions show up, boy, you got to recognize it and call it out and know what's happening and learn how to quiet it. And it's a little bit of mindful meditation, kind of refocusing your mind and building up that self-command. And then also building up the wise part of your brain and leveraging that side, because we've all done it, sometimes serendipitously, or sometimes accidentally, or sometimes unknowingly, or sometimes intentionally. But what if you can do it all the time? Because we know, Lori, for example, if I say, Lori, guess what? Your hand is on a hot stove, but I want you to solve this big accounting problem. It's going to be hard to solve the problem while your hand is on the stove, right? Because your hand is burning. You can't really focus. So I teach clients to take their hand off the stove and then figure out how to solve that problem with all the wise brain and aspects that you have to be able to solve that problem. So over those 7 weeks, it's a lot of practice, a lot of experiential. I would say 20% insight in helping you and building on topics you already may know, but a lot of it is 80% of it is going to be practice and kind of training your mind to handle situations. So sometimes you only get a split second, as I always say, between stimuli and response. So we want to keep you in that wise perspective more times than not.
You know what I hear a lot from people who really love having a coach, and I hear a lot from people that want a coach, is that one of the things they're looking for, and they say these words, and I'm sure you've heard them before, Kevin, they want somebody to hold them accountable. They want someone to keep them responsible. They want someone to keep them on track because they feel like if they had someone they had to report to, they would stay with the program more than on their own, you know? Comment on that. Do you hear that as well? And what do you think that positive, negative? Let me just keep it open. Are you familiar, I'm sure, with what I'm talking about?
I'm very familiar. I mean, folks come for coaching for a variety of reasons, but what you mentioned is a big aspect, which is the accountability. I tend to be more of an accountability partner, if you will, and I do it from a positive mindset. There is no chastising. There's no, hey, you didn't do whatever. I will check in from a place of wisdom to see, okay, did we talk, did you accomplish what you wanted to do? And if not, let's talk about what prevented you and figure out what we need to do now so we get back on course, because there may be things that are still interrupting your ability to complete what it is you want to do. But a lot of times people want to come with the planning aspect. Help me put together a plan, coach, from a wise perspective so that I can activate it, or help me innovate, come up with new ideas, or help me explore things. So there's a variety of things, but accountability is I'd say about a third.
Yeah, and I think that it also plays into what we talked about at the beginning, going from corporate to being an entrepreneur, because the fact is humans do really well with synergy of other humans when they want to achieve something. You get everybody on the same page, everybody on the same team, and it's remarkable what they can do, and we play off each other's energy. And maybe even if you look at a marathon, one person's feeling like they can't run anymore, the other person comes up, then they start running, their friends there, all of a sudden they're running with their friend and they don't realize they're tired. We've all had that experience. I just use a marathon, right? But we
Yeah.
have had that where suddenly we are energized and excited when we were not, because someone else was there and was doing it with us, right? Well,
Yeah.
then you take the entrepreneur that's starting the solopreneur, they have nobody there doing it with them. And I
Mhm.
think that becomes the void that perhaps a coach with a program helping them to go through it fills. Do you feel that could be a bit of it as well?
Undoubtedly, to take it back to the fitness example, Lori, if you wanted to get fit and you started going to the gym, boy, there are going to be days when you don't want to go or not feeling up to it. But if you had a trainer, if you had a coach, guess what he's going to do or she's going to do? They're going to inspire you. They're going to challenge you. They're going to accompany you and, motivate you at times. And there's going to be days when you're going to be excited to go, and those are great. And there's going to be days where you're not so excited, or things didn't go your way. You didn't eat as healthy, or you didn't sleep as great. And we're going to figure out what is needed to help you to continue and to make progress so you can have the outcomes you desire. So back to your point, yes, a coach is highly beneficial. And then I think it helps, given I've been through a lot of what clients have been through from an entrepreneurial side. I've had the fears, I've had the doubts, and I've had to learn the very things I'm helping people to learn and practice. I'd be remiss to say how bad my judge was of my own shortcomings and mistakes. I wouldn't let it go. I would ruminate. And guess what? All that energy didn't allow me to progress or even make my business more successful or figure out what I could do to solve the challenges that I thought I was messing up on. Right. So, yeah, I think it's highly, impactful if you get a great coach who can help you to quiet your mind first and then figure out, boy, what do we need to do strategically, tactically, from a place of wisdom. I think it's paramount.
I love the word wisdom. I always say I don't need more intelligence as much as I need more wisdom. And I think wisdom is so genuine. Going back to talking about voices in your head, and I said I became aware of mine at a young age. My joke was I always was like, I would say to myself, I'd say, Lori, if you don't shut up, I'm going to file for a divorce. And I already contacted the judge and they said it's a conflict of interest. They will not give us a divorce. So we're going to have to learn to live together. So some of these voices are going to have to get out because there's not enough room. So I can totally, totally relate to that. A lot of what we're talking about and it's something I hadn't thought about in a very long time, but my mind was just triggered to this is, finding new comfort zones, getting out of our old comfort zones and finding new comfort zones. And this goes back, Kevin, you're bringing up thoughts that I haven't had for decades, because I was probably in my 20s when I met this guy in business. I can't remember his name, but he was like a real interesting character for sure. And one day we were having lunch, and he took out a piece of paper, and guys, if you can imagine a piece of paper, and he drew a circle, right? And he said, the circle is your existence. And then he had a bunch of X's that were inside the circle. And he said, this is your comfort zone. And he said, what happens is an X is going to come out of nowhere, hit your circle, and you don't want to go outside your comfort zone. So it's going to bang it, but the circle won't break. And then an X of a similar nature will come from over here. And eventually enough X's will come, situations, that it'll bang the circle so much it will harm the surface of the circle, and the circle will break open and incorporate the X and grow bigger. And he told me at that point, the purpose of life is to grow the circle as big as you can. And I think that's a good analogy or story from my past of what we're talking about. Taking on those new experiences, whether it's being an entrepreneur or whatever it is, and learning how to get yourself on the same page with yourself to get that X to come in your circle and grow your circle as big as it can. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great example, Laurie. I like that. I may steal that.
Please do.
You're right. You're right. I mean, things are going to happen. Let's be honest. Things are going to happen in business, and we want to classify it as good or bad and make it, but how do you know? Something that may happen that you think is not so great could be the difference maker. It could be something you needed to learn, or something skill you need to build as a result of things not going your way, right? Because you never know how things are going to work out. Because if we did, guess what? We'd already know, but you
Right.
don't know.
It wouldn't be
You don't
fun
know.
then.
Yeah, you don't know what situation. So as you embark on the entrepreneurial journey, guess what? Things are going to happen. Things are going to be, what you think is great, and that could, turn out to be something that leads to something not so great in your mind. But how you handle that and keep grounded and, discern what you should do next. And, because some things are, meant to happen to help you to be better, to do better, is what I like to say. So we don't let it discourage. We don't let it deter. We don't let it, keep us in a negative mindset if it's not happening the way we would like. It could be feedback. And even to your point earlier, like you mentioned, some folks, you have to figure that out from a place of discernment and wisdom, given, hey, this might not be the business for you. But trying and figuring that out could be a benefit that may lead to the next opportunity that you never, thought could happen, but you're not ready to let go, and figuring out what's holding you from doing that is part of the process as well. So, yeah.
And that brings up the one last thing I was going to talk about before we end for today, and it falls in place perfectly, and that is that word attachment. Oh, we do get attached to everything, don't we? Even if it's not working and it's not paying our bills, we just
Right.
cling on to it. The humans and myself included. So, what's up with our attachment, and how can people do an assessment of what they're doing, maybe out of fear and attachment, rather than what they think it's working and making them happy? I see so many people that are doing the opposite of what they want because they're so attached to what always was.
No doubt. There's pride of ownership. I mean, it's your baby. You don't want to throw it out prematurely. If I just give it a little extra push, a little extra financing or time, and then they feel of, being a failure. I mean, who wants to be seen in the eyes of their peers and friends and family? You made this a big announcement. You were launching the business 2 years ago, and then, what's
Yeah,
happened?
and
So
that's big.
lots of negative voices playing on your psyche. To be perfect, or judging yourself for not, succeeding. And then the avoider can show up, and you're avoiding the unpleasant, and unwinding, and what that means. And it's your baby. I mean, you don't want to throw the baby out. You're like, wait, but sometimes that may be what's needed. And how do you
It
get to
totally
that?
is.
Yeah, how do you discern from that? And I mean, I've had clients I've had to help decide, they make the decisions, of course, but helping them to figure out what's best from a wise perspective. Because when you're in that negative mindset, it'll tell you, keep it going, keep
Yeah.
faking it till you make it.
A little bit more, one little bit more. I know.
A
So
little
true.
bit more, a little bit more. And that, and then you
Yeah.
know what? I mean, hey, that it could happen, but sometimes we have to, from a place of wisdom, recognize this was an experience that I had to go through, and now it's time to move on. Just like staying in a relationship longer than you need to. Sometimes you gotta, thank you
Same
brought
thing.
that up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's, and you know, in my own life and in all the people's lives that I've come across in business, when they closed the company down, I always say they were swimming and they got on an island and they got rested up. They have always come back more powerful, more financially secure, a better idea. It was like they needed that wisdom, then they needed to take it and stew on it in a safe place so they could come back bigger, better, stronger. It always ends that way. So here we are at the closing hour. Thank you so much for coming on and having an important conversation that isn't had enough, because we talk about business and we talk about finance and marketing and legal. And I think positive intelligence, well-being, mindset, awareness of what's being spoken to you in your head, these are important aspects of success in entrepreneurship as well. So I pass it on to you, Kevin, for your final words as we close up today.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I didn't mention though how I kind of retired from my previous endeavors. People think I'm a lot younger than I am, but I'm mid 50s almost, right? So I semi-retired and decided to, become a life coach and help others figure out the things that took me a while to figure out, and that my mind was my worst enemy at times, and getting my own way and causing a lot of stress and anxiety and doubt. And that took up a lot of energy, which didn't help me to be successful in business. Even though I was successful, a lot of it was, not because my mind was helping. I was just, brute force ignorance. So my point is, I like to help clients quiet their mind and then figure out from that wise place how to go about making good business decisions, being the entrepreneur they want to be, and having the outcomes they desire from that place of positivity as opposed to negativity. So that's kind of my closing remarks. And I'm happy to, meet with anyone. I think we'll share that I do a free 30-minute
I was
session to
just going
help.
to say that. I was going to mention that because Sadie's put it into the chat. Kevin's got a free offering, so make sure you check out in chat. You've got an upcoming program as well. Sadie's been putting it in the chat continuously, but I
Okay.
wanted everybody, in fact, she just did again. I wanted to make sure that they knew that they got a free 30-minute coaching session, so you guys can contact Kevin and have a discussion about what is happening in your head that may be affecting what's happening in your business.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Laurie.
So
And
Sadie, we're going to bring you back to close us down. Good conversation, Sadie, don't you think?
I mean, this is a way to start the day. I mean, if you're not motivated and like, woof, I mean, I think this is why we all hang out in this space. We're like, we're go-getters. We're ready to go. I love it.
Yep, we sure are. So, guys, Sadie's going to stay as she always does. That means the chat will stay open. Be sure to get Kevin's information, any other information that's in the chat. I know you guys had lots of great conversation amongst yourself, which I always love. Kevin, thank you again so much for coming on the show and having a very thought-provoking and well-needed conversation and discussion about mind and entrepreneurship. So, to all my frequent flyers that are here every single week, I love it that you're here. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. If you were brand new, welcome and look forward to you next week again. So, thank you, everybody, for watching Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams, and I will see you next week. Bye, everybody. Bye, Kevin. Bye, Sadie.
Bye. And guys, I have a little poll for you there. If you guys don't mind answering that, because we always say we got to get that government funding and we love Lori. I'll be here in the background. I'll be on mute. If you need anything, let me know. But what an awesome session, right? Sarah, let me put in the link again for the recording. We don't have an exact date because I do not handle the upload of the recording, but let me make sure that you have the link for our YouTube channel, okay? And you can actually see all our past shows over here, so it's pretty awesome. Hang on one second. And here you go. If you guys want to check out past shows, this is a link. You know, maybe some days you just need to go through a little entrepreneurial mindset so you can find a lot of awesome recordings. I think we have like 3 years of recordings there, but don't quote me on that, okay? Oh, thank you, Richard. Like I said, hey man, we're all about the positive vibes, good energy at SBDC over here. So this is why me and Lori love rocking it out. We will be here. So if you've been in our Tuesday sessions, our Wednesday sessions, it has a little different flavor. But as we said, we are here for you folks. Please contact us. I'm going to put the SBDC information in there for you guys. I don't know if you guys are a client yet or not, but if you are not, if you're outside of the Los Angeles area, let me put this SBDC information because you can get your one-on-one free business consultation over here. So why not get your own business advisor, right?